listening to the Lockdown live stream, a special edition Provoke and Inspire episode.
Welcome to the Provoke and Inspire podcast. Right now, nobody is watching us. So, David, you and I could dance like it's 1976. How is it going?
It's going great. It's really going good.
I almost feel like we should do the introduction again. You think we should do it again? One person is watching. Here we go. We're going to start it again. No, we're not going to start it again. Welcome to the Provoke.
Do it again. Do it again.
No. Welcome to the Provoke and Inspire podcast. My name is Ben Pierce. I am the host of this wacky show. I'm going to look right at you, webcam, so that you can feel my eyes and you can feel my heart. The purpose of this podcast is to call followers of Jesus to radical faith outside of the church. Typically, it's a triumvirate, including myself, David Pierce, my father, and Luke Greenwood. But Luke is not presently with us, and I have no idea why. David, do you have any idea why?
I just got a text from Nigel, and he said that he's at a fruit booter convention with Nigel.
A fruit booting convention?
Yeah, and he's working on his ollies.
You got your lingo wrong, because you don't ollie when you're wearing fruit boots. You skip, you prance, and occasionally you leap.
Well, anyway, that's what I'm just relaying what Nigel said.
You're just the messenger, is what you're saying. Right. You're saying, back off me, man. I'm just the messenger.
Absolutely.
Anyway, there are a few things you could do to support this podcast. You can rate it or review it on iTunes. That increases the exposure. If you're not listening to this on iTunes, if you're on Spotify, I'm sorry. We have no solution for you there. You can review it on Stitcher. But what is Stitcher, and does anyone even use that? That's one thing you can do that's helpful. You can join our podcast community page. That is very, very encouraging. Leon Humphrey says lies. What is he referring to? Probably the fruit booting. I'm not sure what that means. Zechariah Cram says soul skater for life.
Absolutely, bro.
And Gabe says, why was I not invited for that? And I assume he means the fruit booting.
He was invited.
Yeah, but it was a two-person fruit booting camp.
Oh, that's
true. They're not just going to let anybody in. Anyway, you can join the Provoke and Inspire podcast community page that we have on Facebook. That's where we dive a little deeper. We support one another. We have these conversations about calling followers of Jesus to radical faith outside of the church. It's a vibrant community full of laughter and deep conversations and good times. Before we go on to David's random story, I do want to let you know we are very excited about the guests that we have today. We have been trying to book Garrett Russell for a long time. He's the vocalist of the band Silent Planet, an American metalcore band out of California. I've been following him for a while, and he's a deep guy with great things to say, a solid artist, and I'm excited to hear what God's been putting on his heart and just generally what's going on in his life during these crazy times. So we'll bring him on in a second. But before we do that, we have
David's random story.
So I thought you were going to play the disclaimer.
No.
No?
No.
Okay. So anyway, when I was, moi, is there a party here?
No.
Yeah.
Is the party here?
It's a party.
In the words of Billy Madison, it's called reading left to right, top to bottom, words from sentences. Actually, that might have been, no, that's Tommy Boy. Carry on.
Okay. Well, if moi was here, there'd definitely be a party. But anyway, when I was in university, I never had any money. And so I was always trying to figure it out. And for some of you, I want to give tips to our listeners about how you can survive with no money.
This isn't going to be about damaged pies again, is it?
No, but no, it isn't damaged pies. But that is one way, is that we've talked about this before. You can go when they open up places again, restaurants and such, you can just say, hey, do you have any damaged pies? And that's always worked for me.
Yeah.
But sometimes though, when you're just eating pies all the time, you need to bring it to another level.
Yeah.
And so when I was going to the University of Minnesota, I had a friend named Scott, and Scott was he was a master at getting free food. Free food was kind of like his MO. And then later he became a lawyer, and he sued people. But during our no money days, we would go to this place called Annie's Parlor.
Oh yeah, that still exists. Great
Yeah,
malts.
Yes, and it was kind of like where we would go. But the problem was we'd go to Annie's Parlor and we'd have no money. And so they would the waitress would come and say, "Hey, so they'd bring us some water, and then Scott would go, "Hey, how you doing?" And then the waitress would be going, "Oh, good." And so
the pacing
what?
of this story is just, it's putting me
So
in a
then-
slumber. Speed it
then,
up a touch.
So then and then there's this girl there, and she had like a Volkswagen, the waitress, and she wanted to, because they had these advertisements that Volkswagens would float if you drove them into the water.
I was unaware of this byproduct of such a vehicle.
And apparently her father bought her a Volkswagen for her birthday or something. And so she wanted to know if it would float, and she drove her car into a lake to see if it would float. This is true. And it didn't float. And so she was kind of depressed about that, and her father was not happy. And so, but we're like trying to get some food. So then Scott goes, "Hey,
This story is just
What?
meandering. Get to
No,
the
it's
point.
not.
Yes.
No, it's not meandering.
You're lulling me into sleep. Move
No,
on with the story.
So then it's like, "Hey, sorry about your car." She's like, "Yeah, I know. My dad's really angry." And I said, "So do you have any food or anything, like damaged burgers or anything?" And she's like, "No, but I have some damaged fries." And so she brought us some.
What is
like,
a damaged fry? I'm pretty
she
sure I
brought
saw a band called Damaged Burger one
So-
time.
So she brought us like this whole plate of damaged
There is no
fries.
such thing as a damaged fry. It
And
doesn't
then
even make
later-
any sense. They're not that fragile.
And then later we got some damaged burgers to go with it, and a damaged coffee. And then but
All right.
she wasn't working there much longer after that.
We are getting really close to the Bruce red line. So wrap it
So
up.
anyway, I don't know. I'm sure that Garrett will have some thoughts about this, but that's the random story for today. And I hope it encouraged everyone.
David's random story.
Well, anyone could use a little free food at a time like this. But all right, so we're going to bring Garrett on. I see him on the screen below, and it looks like he's ready. I think he's ready. So whether he's not or whether he is, here is Garrett Russell. Hey, man, how are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Garrett,
Yes.
good.
Hey.
Oh, it's good to see you, man. So I need you to clear up a rumor for me. Anyway, just to back up a bit, this is Garrett Russell from the band Silent Planet. We've been trying to get you on for a while. I'm so glad that this has worked out. So thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I'm excited. What rumor are we clearing up today?
Okay, the rumor is that when my production sound guy was like checking your levels, you were at the time not wearing a shirt. Is this true or not true?
To be honest, and little known fact, I was also not wearing pants. So yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just wearing a cut off Dunder Mifflin shirt now. But
You're probably not wearing pants right now either.
I half true. I'm wearing shorts.
Oh,
but,
okay, good.
Yeah.
Cool.
If you're not going to wear a shirt, don't wear pants. I say be free, after
dude,
all.
I grew up in the far northern California, and I just didn't. I would go entire summers with like maybe putting on 2 shirts the entire summer. I just never. And then it's cool because now I tour for a living, and on summer tours I also just don't really wear a shirt until we got to go on stage. So yeah.
Dude, that's fair enough. I hang around with a lot of Aussies, so I'm very familiar with the shirtless living lifestyle.
Yes, yeah, Aussies and Kiwis are big believers and not rocking the shirt unless they got to, and I respect it.
Yep,
you got it. So we had Maddie Montgomery on just a couple podcasts ago, and
no way, I've toured with that guy a lot.
But he was talking about how, like, how during this pandemic you're supposed to do things like write a book, learn a new language, discover physics, that kind of thing.
Right.
And so apparently what he did is he built a chicken house. So my
Chicken
first
coop.
question is
chicken house. What the heck?
So what have you done that? Have you discovered physics? Have you built a chicken house? What are you doing?
I'm trying to learn how to play some of my favorite songs on guitar, because I'm even though I'm in a band, I really don't know my way around the guitar. And so
Cool.
I've been like working on that. Uh, that's been my favorite thing. And I'm like writing as well, but I am always kind of writing. But the one new thing for me would be the guitar
Cool.
aspect. And I'm a slow learner. I'm a really slow learner, so it's gonna take a long time, but I'm getting a start. And even like today I was watching my buddy play this like cool Star Wars game. And I was like doing that, and it was cool. It's
Nice.
I like to try to learn the guitar while I'm like doing something else, you know,
Sure.
because then it takes my mind off of how bad I am at the guitar.
Fair enough.
While my fingers are still getting, you know, the calluses that they need. So
Yeah, I was in a phase where I was like, I'm going to learn how to play guitar. And then I just realized there's a lot of people that are already really good at guitar. And so I said, you know what? If I'm going to be in a band, I'd rather, well, at this point, I'll settle for Dave Grohl as opposed to the shredding guy. It's like power chords, basic things. I got guys that are so good that at this point, it just feels like, I don't know. But I respect your desire to want to learn for sure.
Dude, I'm right there with you. Like I have very modest goals for the guitar. Like I just want to be able to play all my favorite songs, and all my favorite songs are not shreddy songs.
It's not like Dragon Force.
They're all like songs that can be played on the acoustic guitar and sound nice. Like, you know, some Death Cab songs and Bright Eyes song and just like different stuff I like. So it's definitely very doable. I'm like I am in a band with, in my opinion, one of the better guitar players like on this earth. Like he's kind of wild how good Mitchell is at playing guitar. And he does, our band isn't always showing off guitar, but he, you know, like he'll hear like an Animals as Leader song and be like, oh, that's in, you know, 7/1000 times, you know, and he just like figures it out. And so I see that and I'm like, that'll never be me. Like I could actually spend every waking hour until I die and I still won't get there, because this guy was doing it when he was, you know, 5 years old. And you know, when you're young and when your brain is very malleable. So I'm never gonna get there. I'm just like, hey, I'm gonna like try to strum the guitar. You know,
dude, I feel the same way. I got a guy like that. It's like he's the guy that doesn't matter if anything melodic, piano, guitar, bass. He doesn't even play bass, but he plays bass better than anyone I know.
Yeah.
Piano. It's so I kind of have the same vibe with piano right now. It's like if I can just play some Death Cab, some Coldplay, if I can just play some cool stuff, like that's me on the piano. And for me, it's like piano's fun, man. I don't know. I have an upright right now where I am, and I'm like, oh, if I do also have 2 kids, so 4 and 2. So those dreams are probably just going to be dreams. But either way, I respect that. Transitioning to something a little bit more serious. So we live obviously in a crazy time right now. I mean, for everybody, it's crazy, and people are struggling, and people are, you know, afraid and confused. And on the surface, art at a time like this could seem, I don't know, is it so important in the spectrum of everything else? I don't believe that, but you could have that perception. Like maybe art isn't as urgent as, let's say, like doctors or nurses, which, you know, obviously they are hugely important. But what role do you think is uniquely powerful for an artist to be playing at a time like this? Maybe even especially as a Christian artist, what do you think God would have us do? What do you think a unique role for us to play is at a time of confusion and fear and everything else?
Yeah. Before I answer that directly, I want to get at something you mentioned a little bit earlier, which is, you know, people are asking, does art have a role? And I think that is a deeply political question. I think that art is in itself political because, as you know, political means life of the city, or the city life. And there's even political, you know, opinions on art. You know, the budget for art in parks got slashed pretty hard actually a few years ago. That you know, budgets that were used to fund like public art programs and stuff. And so I think in general, there is a attitude that is at best ambivalent towards art, and at worst is actually like frustrated with art. Because you see, I think there's a certain mindset that is pervading our culture of fascism. And what I mean by that is I see a growing desire to sort of absolutely squash and destroy people that disagree with us. Like
Yeah.
if someone doesn't agree with you don't want them to have any role in society. You want that person fired from their job and blacklisted and really it doesn't really matter where people fall on the political spectrum. I do see this kind of rising tide of fascism and extremism, and you even see it in the rhetoric involved in politics. And so why am I saying that? Why am I talking about politics? I'm talking about that because as Christians, we are called to interact with the city, the life of the city. And so I think it's important to understand, okay, this is where we're at. We're at a time where people have a growing sort of impulse towards controlling one another, and people are struggling more than ever to actually like hear each other.
Yeah.
And we quickly want to say, oh, who are you? You're a blank, therefore I think blank of you. And to just sort of fit each other into categories. And as you know, I believe categories are in a lot of ways satanic because they pull away from the individuality of the person. Like, for instance, a theologian I love, I interact with him on Twitter, really interesting guy. His name's David Dark. He always says celebrity is one of the most satanic concepts. And I totally agree with him the more I think about it, because celebrity is just another way that we categorize, like, oh, these people are important because of this. And so I'm seeing this really evil thing happen where people are just seeing each other as categories, and it doesn't seem like they're really interacting with each other anymore. And that's where art comes in, because art, I think, helps us to understand one another in a world where, someone can't just walk up and say, hi, I'm a Christian, but before you judge me, let me tell you my story. People probably won't hear that. Or like, hi, like I'm a anarchist communist, but let me tell you my story. People are instantly going to be like, no, like I don't deal with people like you. But what art allows us to do is to really like grab someone and tell them something, tell them a story. Like I'm convinced that music is like the language, I think, that maybe people were speaking pre-Babel, because in Babel, God says, it's kind of weird. God says, hey, let us come down and give them language so as to confuse them. Right. So when language is introduced, it's not really a nice concept. Language is like the way that we split and didn't understand one another. And I'm convinced that music is like a universal language. And, that's why, like, I mean, I see people, covering songs that my band has done or covering songs that other bands have done. And they're like in Iran and they're like learning these songs, and like they probably can't speak English very well, and I cannot speak their language. But like we can communicate with art and with music. And so I think art allows you to be in someone's perspective. And so what I'm doing with Silent Planet when I'm trying to write is I'm trying to write lyrics and write stories that allow us to hear from different perspectives. So like I'll be writing from someone's perspective, and hopefully showing instead of telling. My fiction professor in college used to always say, are you showing or are you telling? Because the goal is to show. And so my goal when I write is to show people a story instead of tell them, like, say I want to get a point across, because of course I have my own opinions, but I don't decide to say, like, on a song, I don't like fascism is bad, freedom's important. Like, I don't say that right off the gate. I want to tell the story of a soldier in Spain during the Spanish Civil War. And I want people to experience what this person is experiencing. So that they can maybe like come to a conclusion that has a face and a name. Because like so often people are full of opinions and their opinions won't move. And then they meet a person that represents the opposite of their opinion. And all of a sudden they're like, wait, maybe I don't know everything that like people say, oh, I know everything there is to know about these kinds of people. And then they meet one of those people and they're like, oh, wait, no, never mind. And it's funny how often we can develop opinions without knowing where people are coming from. And I think that art is really, I think, the greatest hope for people to get outside of their boxes. And so I think art is so gospel, and the people that are making art. I mean, I know artists that aren't Christians, and I'm like, man, in so many ways you are already like following Christ and you don't even know about it. And so then a lot of these times these people actually meet Jesus and they're just like, oh wow, yeah, you're right, like I was already interacting with something really sacred. And in this time of isolation, art is, I think, a way that while we're stepped back, that people can maybe actually start to try to understand each other. And hopefully, maybe miraculously, when this quarantine is over, folks will maybe give another chance to people that don't look like them and sound like them or think like them.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that's a really, really long-winded reply. But
No,
yeah.
and our, by the way, our comments are just blowing up with love for you. You're a very loved man, apparently. So
Hey, I love you guys. Oh,
all
hey,
these
Matt.
all these guys just writing and
Mikey Ritter. Oh my God, Mikey Ritter's in here. You guys know, do you know Mikey?
oh yeah, he was on tour with us for 2
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we had to kick him out of our band.
Because I early Silent Planet, really early Silent Planet. Like our music was so bad that we try to hide it from the internet. But we used to tour with Mikey's band, See the Light, and they were so good. I mean, Mikey would just. They were the only metal band that had like a breakdown with a piano like solo. It was insane.
Oh,
Dude,
that's
Mikey,
definitely Mike.
like Barrett, their vocalist screams, "Father, I," and then he just like goes nuts on the piano during a breakdown, and it was really, really inspiring. And I think my band, I think tried to kind of copy them, but just failed at it before we just kind of went another direction. My roommate who's here just said, "Take off your shirt, Garrett," which is funny.
Yeah,
Christina's here. Hi, Christina. Are you back in Spain? Oh, that's funny. There's a lot of friends in here.
We're
Hey,
getting
Jace,
a lot of
come
people.
over here.
We're getting a lot of people.
Jay, say hi to Christina's. Christina's watching this.
Where's she at?
Christina and Jace went to Bethel School.
All right.
Christina, I love you.
This is my roommate Jace.
Oh,
And
you're looking good. That's how Garrett was when
you know,
we first
you were
talked to him.
talking about getting free food, and this
Yeah.
guy is
he good at it?
say he's good at it is an understatement. He's kind of a legend around like bands that we've toured with for getting free food. He would run around with his shirt off, get rollerblades, and just go skate into places and walk out of Olive Garden with hundreds of dollars of food.
Was this him right here?
Oh wow!
It basically was. Just without the shirt, put a little bit of hair on that kid's chest, and that is Jace getting free food for us.
It could have been like
you're saying rollerblading is a key to free food? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, rollerblade. Oh yeah, they can't.
I
Yeah,
can't.
yeah. Roller. He would be on his rollerblades, dude. He would just be like, "Can I pray for you?" And he would pray for people, and they would give him free food. It was insane. And this one time, he got free Olive Garden for everyone. And we were on Warped Tour, and so we're in the parking lot. He got free Olive Garden. This is kind of insane.
Are we allowed to tell this story?
Yeah. So
yeah, please do.
So he gets free Olive Garden for everyone, and they're sitting in the parking lot where all the buses and all the vans are for all the bands, and they set it down. They take off the tin foil, and right as they take the food off of the tin foil, and the food's all sitting there, like hundreds of dollars of food, right?
I feel like
Big pasta trays.
Yeah, it's
and
bad.
so a bus.
Well,
drives-
we all, like Mitchell and all of us, we all ate a full meal, and we were gonna go for round 2.
Okay, so they're gonna go for round 2. They already got some,
But
and so a bus drives by, and right as the bus is driving by, a pee bottle falls out of our van and rolls. And
Oh,
the
no.
bus rolls over the pee bottle and splashes the pee all over the
All over
food.
and the worst part about
Oh,
it was
man.
Garrett wasn't there, so it didn't touch Garrett.
Well, I
Everyone
saw
else in
it.
the band.
Or no, I think I pulled up like 20 seconds after. I was on a date. The date didn't go that well, but I'm still friends with her. But we were like, yeah, this isn't a match. She's actually married now. Good for her. But I was on a date. We just got tacos. We're coming back from the taco shop, and my guys are like almost crying. They're like
crushed with
paralyzed with fear and anguish. And this is like day 40 of Warped Tour. So
It's true.
this
But
is
But you know
yeah.
that's why you got to recycle. If you recycle, you're not going to have issues like that.
Well, the thing is,
You
we-
continue to pee.
you see, we
You don't stop
never
peeing.
stop the van, but we always got to pee. So there's a lot of pee bottles in our van. It's
I
pretty
think-
awful.
I think what David is saying is, you know, the really bad movie Waterworld.
Water
way
World,
back?
yeah.
I don't know if I'd call that a bad movie, but go on.
Okay, let me rephrase. I
There's a lot of
apologize.
hairy chests in that movie.
Remember the very epic movie Waterworld? He recycles in the beginning. I think that's what David is talking about. Then you wouldn't need a pee bottle.
Recycle this.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Dude, this has gone in a direction all of its own, and I love
Yeah.
it. And this is
Hey, I
amazing.
love
Yeah.
y'all. You guys are a
Love
blessing.
to-
Look at that I thought that was a mustache at first, but it's not. It's just natural man hair.
So one of the things that we were talking about is just putting everyone in categories.
Yeah.
And one of the things I really could you talk about seeing people as individuals, because I think that's a really important thing, that we don't see people in terms of their category, but we see them as individuals. And
Yeah.
can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think, yeah, we see people as wholes, oh, sorry, I'm like turning this thing. Let me get it straight. I think as Christians, we're called to see people as wholes. Because the mystery of the Christian faith, and one of the main reasons why they would get, why, the philosophers would mock them, and the government was not okay with them, was this idea of like the incarnation, right? And you sometimes see like the old paintings of Jesus, like with this, and this is representing the incarnation, that Jesus was fully God and fully human, at the human finger, right? But and so Jesus was fully God and fully human, and that mystery that you could be both at the same time, and that Jesus held that tension, and was tempted but never released himself into sin, and that's something we're called to as Christians, and so Jesus is our model of what it means to be a whole person. And healing healing's quite a process, and we all need healing. We need healing in all sorts of ways. We need physical healing, emotional healing, spiritual healing, but that healing is all one and the same too, because even those categories that we have of physical and mental are reductive, to say the least. I had a bad anxiety problem, and it caused a bad stomach problem. And it took me like 2 years to realize that they were like the same problem. They were just manifested in two different ways, but it was the same darn anxiety that was destroying my life, and making me eventually have to go to a mental hospital. And so seeing people involves understanding that as Christians, we've been called to this identity of reconciling what it means to be children of God and to be people on this world, and recognizing that person once again. It's not so much I think as seeing an individual, because I think we're called to be in a community, but is to see them as a whole being, because a lot of times what's tearing people up is their individuality, that they're so focused on themselves and they're so isolated that they can't get the healing they need. And for some of us, it's that we don't know who we are because we're constantly just giving in to whatever's around us. And yeah, art does a fantastic job of helping people to express themselves and for people to understand who they are. I mean, I think about this all the time. I get on like there's like a depths, we call it a depths posting page, and folks that are like involved with our band, and I don't say fans because they're more than, it's not like a fan thing. It's like they believe in what they believe in loving one another. Not even everyone on that page is like a Christian, and that's okay. It's just people getting together that love our music and they want to love each other. And so there's this page, and I always see people ranking their favorite bands. I mean, how often do you get on Facebook and you see 9 albums and they say, pick 3, pick your 3 favorites, or they say, list your top 10 albums of the year, or what are the 10 greatest rock albums ever? Why do we do that as people? We do that because music hits so close to our core that's how sometimes how we express ourselves isn't writing a song, but it's actually just like telling people what an album means to you. Because an album for some people like gets them dead center, and it's like, it's that moment of like, I've been seen, like I've been identified by this album. And so we use sometimes our favorite music to express who we are. And I think for a lot of us, that's one of the many ways we heal, is identifying what's speaking to us and then like expressing to people. If you listen to this album, you can understand a part of me that the English language cannot express, or whatever language I speak cannot express. But if you like really digest this album and understand it, you'll kind of get a part of me. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Garrett,
for sure.
Garrett, one of the things that I've always been, I'm really impressed with about you is how you've been so honest and vulnerable about your mental health struggles.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it shows a lot of courage and humility, and it really helps a lot of people. Can you talk about that? You know, why you've been so open?
Dude, absolutely. I when I was in graduate school studying clinical psychology, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder by a clinician, and I was going through a lot of stuff, and diagnosis is a difficult thing, and it was a weird time in my life because I was helping college students that were going through, depression, anxiety, and stuff, and I was doing some diagnoses, and then I get told by someone, I think you may have bipolar disorder, and that kind of shook me up. And then around that time my band started to tour full time, and in a lot of ways that allowed me to not have to deal with some of my issues that I had when I was living a more kind of a standard life, working a job and going to school and stuff, and doing what a lot of people do. And so tour was my dream, and I got to start touring, which was great, but it also allowed me to just kind of adapt to a lifestyle that made it easier for me than just being a person in society. I got to just sort of like the things that I wasn't good at, and the things that would kind of cause instability, I could just kind of gloss over those, and I could just focus on, I'm going to play a show tonight. And so it allowed me to sort of live in this fantasy reality, and I don't have any regrets. But I also I actually had a teacher in grad school tell me this: every decision involves loss, he would say. And spiritual maturity is coming to terms with the fact that every decision is also going to cause some form of loss. And we always like to focus on the gain, but there's a loss there. And so I'm glad that I started to tour, and I'm glad that I'm doing this, but there was a loss there because I kind of lost this fight that I was supposed to be fighting to figure out what it means to be a healthy adult. And I also, I lost a church community because I couldn't really be a part of it. And I wouldn't say I lost friends, but, relationships shifted. And in that time, I was enjoying being on tour so much, but there was definitely some stuff that I think I was running away from a little bit. And it, like all things we run away from in life, they have a way of finding us. And it found me in Belgium on tour. And I had kind of a complete mental breakdown. And I was unhinged. I kind of lost myself. I became a danger to myself. And my bandmates were very loving, and they were trying to help me, but no one could really help me in that moment. And so I just ran away, and I was running around this town in Belgium for like 4 hours, hiding and sitting on a bridge, contemplating jumping off the bridge. Maybe I don't want to jump off the bridge. It's probably only going to break my legs. It might not even do the trick because I didn't want to be alive anymore. And then the cops found me, and they literally grabbed me. Honestly, I don't even know next time we tour if I'm going to be allowed in Belgium, to be honest with you. I think I'm okay, but I don't know. They grabbed me. They put me in a room, a white room in a hospital, kind of just like you see in the movies. And I was in that room, and I kind of lied my way out of the room. I got on a plane. I got home. I sat down with my dad at a diner. Hadn't slept in like 3 days. Hadn't eaten in 3 days, 2 days. And I just said, I'll do whatever I need to do to get help. Because not only am I suffering, but I just cost my band $50,000. And, we just dropped off this really big tour opportunity that would have really been good for us as far as getting in front of new potential listeners in Europe. And I caused a lot of people a lot of pain. And so I asked my dad, and he said that I think this facility place will be good for you. So I went there. I was there from December 1st to December 30th. Spent Christmas there, which sucked. It was a process. I got better and worse and better and worse. And actually the day I got out of the hospital was like one of the worst days of my life, because I realized that I'm not just like, I think a lot of times we have a fantasy that like something will change us and take all of our problems away. I think a lot of people get married thinking a lot of people get married thinking, well, like I'll say I do, I'll put the ring on, and then I'll become this better version of myself automatically. But as much as rituals are important, rituals also don't fix all of our problems. And so I remember getting out of the mental hospital so angry that my girlfriend picked me up, and it was in Florida, and she picked me up, and I had to ask her to pull over. And I got on the side of the road, and I like gave myself like a scar on my knuckles, because I just literally just punched the dirt on the side of the road for 10 minutes with rage, because I realized that my process of growth was just starting, and I was really mad because I wanted to be like better. I wanted to have that like cool, I wanted to have that Hallmark cheesy movie thing of like, yeah, he's good now. Yay. But it was, you get out and you realize it's a process. And I learned some tools when I was there, and I got some medications that help, but it's only part of it. And I'm still walking that road. And there are still days that I think about my mental problems and the problems they caused my band in December. And I still start to sweat and shake just thinking about it. We did our first tour we done in a few months in America in February and March, and it got cut short because of COVID. But and on that tour, some days would be great, some days I'd be terrified. I'm like, what if I do that again? What if I like fall apart and cause problems all over again? And man, it's a process, and I want to talk about it. And we wrote a song, and I wrote about it called Trilogy. And, I want to talk about mental illness, and not just for me, but, we have some songs talking about my friend's PTSD, who was a soldier. And my goal is to just talk honestly about stuff, and to do it once again from a narrative perspective, to show it, but not just tell it. Because writing lyrics for this last song was pretty difficult for a while, because I just wanted to write about what I was feeling. But then I realized, like, no, I need to show it. I need people to actually experience it. And I want people at the end of the song to imagine themselves in like a white room at a hospital, and you don't even know what the doctors are saying. You have like literally doctors staring at you speaking Dutch, and you're just like livid and rageful. And they're just probably saying, this American is crazy. And I want people to feel that, and not to live there. I don't want people to stay there, but I want people to really feel like the fear and the rage, and to go through that, because there's such a difference between knowing about something and then knowing it experientially. You know what I mean? Like people, like there's such a difference between someone saying like, yeah, I know him, like, that of this person's existence. And then like, no, I know him. Like that person I understand. And I want people to know the phenomena that we speak about in our music. I don't want them to just know that like, yeah, PTSD is a real problem. I want them to like experience not the disorder, but to experience what that person's like seeing and feeling, and kind of bring people to that. So yeah. Wow. And also thanks to the folks in the comments who have said comforting things. I appreciate it.
People are saying that more and more. And it's amazing, I think, to see culture in a sense waking up to the reality of mental health problems and being more vocal about it. I think that's huge. again, this is the Provoke and Inspire podcast. This will come out tomorrow. If you missed part of this and you're like, I missed part of this, about roughly 1 p.m. Central Time, it'll come out. If you just type Provoke and Inspire anywhere. We're here with Garrett Russell from Silent Planet. Yeah, no, I'm really touched by your story. And I feel like one thing that I think is interesting about what you said, there's so many directions I could go in, but I feel like we should stay on this path. You talk about the idea of showing in art. And I think a false dichotomy a lot of times people make is that to show is to somehow avoid or to not be powerful or direct. It's somehow to subvert or to, you know what I mean? Like, and yet Jesus was a master storyteller and often left people, to be honest, in doubt sometimes, even understanding what he was saying. And I'm a big proponent of giving people what they need and not leaving them empty handed. But would you say that that's just a crazy false dichotomy we make, is that, well, there's clear or there's subtlety?
Oh, dude, all the time, man. I probably like once every tour, I'll have a person pull me aside and say like, hey, you know, like, I'm glad your band's doing well, but like, you need to be more direct about Jesus in your songs, or, you know, like a good example is my buddy Maddie from For Today, or he was in For Today, and he was on this podcast recently. Maddie was very direct in the lyrics of For Today. Like you couldn't really listen to a For Today song and be like, I wonder what these guys believe. You know, it was like very clear. And they were very known for being very evangelistic, you know. And we toured with them a bunch. I mean, without For Today, my band definitely would not have gotten out as much as we did. And so he's a good example of somebody that had a much more direct approach. And I think that was what was on his heart. I think that's what was true for him. I think that's what when he wrote it, he felt that sense of like, yeah, this is what I'm called to do. And I think that's awesome. And I think For Today was awesome. And I was there for their last show in Dallas, crying right along with them, because I knew that something beautiful had come to its proper end. And it was a cool moment. It was sad, but beautiful. It was very bittersweet. Yeah. And that's, I think, what he's called to do. That's who he is. That's how God is using his unique gifts to be a preacher, you know, to speak it out. And that is not my gifting. That's not my background. That's not who God's made me into. God's kind of called me more into something that's maybe a bit more akin to, like, I don't know, weird poetry storytelling or something. And that's okay. And I think a lot of times people have a profound experience with God at some point in their lives. And then not God, it's not God's fault. We often say that's the only way that God works. And I had that powerful experience when I was in this denomination of a church. So clearly, and then we take our experiences and then we universalize it, you know? And so we say, God spoke to me like this, and I was doing this, and God wanted me to quit listening to this or quit doing this. And then we say, therefore, all Christians must have my same process. And that's the problem. I think it's not with God speaking to us. It's what we make of it afterwards, and how we try to create this dogma based off of these powerful experiences of God. And so I hope that as Christians, just as much as I want to be able to say, hey, Maddie does his thing, but that's not what I'm called to do. Well, not in the same way. Maybe the general calling's the same, but it looks a little bit different. Someone in Jesse just said, Tolkien would weave it in, whereas C.S. Lewis had a pretty direct allegories. You know, for C.S. Lewis, it's like, the lion is Jesus. It's very straightforward. Whereas Tolkien, it was a bit maybe more. There's more layers to it for people to uncover. And I think both are okay. Just like those guys could be best friends and have a writers club. I hope that as Christians and as artists, we can accept that different folks have a different process, and instead of being in judgment of one another, maybe we can like encourage that in one another. You know,
you know what I've observed. I mean, I don't think anyone who knows about Silent Planet and about you, I mean, I think they would know that you're a Jesus follower, wouldn't you say?
There's a lot of people that would doubt that, brother. I'm going to be
Really?
honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's, yeah, to, I'm not going to get into details, but I've definitely like one time my buddy jokingly told me to join this group on Facebook. And so I didn't know that he was joking. I just was like, yeah, I'll join it, you know? And so I found out like, oh, this group really does not like me. This like group of Christians is has pretty strong opinions about me and what I'm doing. And they believe, you know, I'm a false prophet, that I'm being used by the devil, whatever. And that happens. Like, you know, and I just say that just to, as much as I would love for, yeah, you know, at the end of the day, we all get along. Unfortunately, a lot of folks don't have any interest in getting along with each other. And that is a reality that I've dealt with being a Christian, but also somebody that wants to talk about social stuff, you know? Like I get told all the time, stop being so political. Like you were too political on stage. And then I'm like, well, I don't think talking about refugees should be a political thing. I think that's a human thing. And I hope that we're, you know, whatever you vote in the voting booth, I hope that you believe that refugees are people. And like, I hope that isn't so much of a political thing. And my goal is never to be political in the binary dichotomy of Democrat, Republican.
Sure.
But I do want to talk about, once again, the life of the city. I want to talk about people and issues. And if people think that's too political, I would say that's gospel, to care about our neighbors. You know what I'm saying? So
Totally.
I mean, I really love your passion and emotional commitment to your art, and I could tell you feel deeply about what you are singing about, what you're talking about. That's very evident. And the last thing I want to be is a Jesus machine. You know what I mean? Someone who can't just talk about real issues and what people are really feeling. And I hate it when Jesus is dumbed down to a bunch of slogans and bumper stickers and that kind of thing. But at the same time, I mean, if you're on the Titanic, you know, and the ship is going down, you need to tell people that there's lifeboats, right? I mean,
oh, absolutely, yeah.
And I think you would agree with me. I mean, that there's no social justice without the cross, right?
Well, I would say that social justice without the cross is empty. Yeah. I think you can do it. I think you can talk about it, but without the cross and the ultimate form of justice, we're talking about existential justice. You know, I think social justice is kind of like a note that's a little bit flat. You know, it's just it doesn't quite ring all the way true. Without the cross, in my opinion, and I. You know, I have a lot of friends that are, you know, they're not believers and they're anarchists or they're communists or they're just, you know, more liberal minded folks that go to the rallies and go protests and stuff. And I tell them, you know, like, hey, like, I think it's cool that you're doing that. I really do. But ultimately, I can't be on board with someone that says, hey, this is always what you got to stand for. Because as a Christian, obedience to God is what I'm called to. And typically my obedience to God, in my experience, will often align myself to more social justice minded people as I obey Jesus. But I'm also not rank and file, because they'll say like, you believe in this? I'm like, yes. You believe in this? Yes. And so therefore you're also with us on this. I'm like, no. And it's like, and that can be annoying for people, because going back to what I said earlier, there's a fascistic impulse in our culture where it's like, it's like, even if we agree on 90%, that's not enough. You got to be all in 100%, or I want nothing to do with you. Right. And, you know, that's something that is interesting interacting with folks, because I'm called to obey Jesus and to follow the cross. And that's going to be really annoying to people that want just like you to line up with their complete agenda. But, you know, just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you sometimes will not line up with the camp that thinks they own you, because you're following Jesus. And that is what oftentimes breaks my heart, because I see, the stereotypical thing, and it's a stereotype because it's true, of a lot of Christian churches just being like super on point with like, yeah, we're Christians, therefore we're like nationalist Republicans. But on the same time, I've seen people that be like, like, I'm a social justice Christian or something, but then all they really like ever seem to do is just align with like a Democrat agenda or something, and they never seem to actually just like I don't know. I think if you're following the God of this universe, you're gonna seem a little bit weird, and Shane Claiborne actually writes a lot about the peculiarity. There's going to be a peculiarity if you follow Jesus, because you don't follow the God of this universe and get called into a completely different kingdom, a completely different allegiance, right? Like our allegiance is to Jesus, not to America. And, for the FBI people that are obviously going to listen to this at some point, it doesn't mean that we're, in the business of destroying the empire, but there is something very subversive about the gospel. Absolutely. And it leads us to become a peculiar people. And that peculiarity is you're inevitably not going to fit in the world's political or social categories. Like if you completely fit down the line with everything, then like I wonder if God's actually speaking to you, because you got to think like, the God of this universe, you're going to get a little weird, at least. You don't have to look weird. You don't have to grow out your hair or get tattoos. That's honestly not even that weird. What you have to do, though, is like start to live a life that will be distinct, I think. So sorry, I'm rambling.
No, it's so good. And I think the thing for us is I'm very passionate about telling people about Jesus, but I think the problem is, it's so much of what you said. So much of it all wraps together. We do not have the ability to nuance anymore. We are so good at creating false dichotomies. There's no room for diversity of the kingdom and the body and the giftings within that kingdom. I think the challenge is that there is a degree, I think, where a lot of artists they don't want to talk about Jesus. It's not really about, as Christians, I'm saying, as Christians, it's not that they're kind of operating in a different gifting. They just don't really want to. There's a cost to it, right? Because you look at the early church, you look at the disciples, there was an intense cost to following Jesus. And the problem is, I think we've gotten so confused what's sort of pride, what's sort of being ashamed, what's just sort of a different calling. And then it's all kind of made worse by the fact that we don't treat each other well. We don't show any grace. We don't show any mercy. We talk about each other and not to each other. And so the whole thing is really sad and complicated, because in the end of the day, speaking of Shane Claiborne, we've had him on many times. He was on just like a month ago.
Oh, awesome.
And man, every time I talk to that guy, I'm like, my view of the gospel is too small, and we have this thing as human beings to elevate our gifting and kind of diminish everyone else's gifting. And so you take a Maddie Montgomery, who's clearly a prophetic preacher, and you can think that's it, right? And anyone who's maybe more subtle is not doing it right, or someone who's more focused on social justice. I think the kingdom of God is supposed to be there's things that tie us together, right? There's essential things that we all are sort of unified on. But then it should be this beautiful, diverse thing where we're operating in different giftings. There's a cost in all of it, I think. It's just sad. It's sad when we as Christians also get sucked into the tribalism and the binary realities that we want to try to force each other into, rather than saying, look, in the end of the day, we are all sons and daughters of the living God, that we all should be lovingly pushing each other and ourselves to live more and more as he's designed us to live. And then we should be celebrating the different manifestations of those giftings rather than demonizing them and saying, oh, you're not doing it like me.
They're like, not everyone's a hand. What the heck? Not everyone's a foot. Not everyone's an eye. Not everyone's a mouth, and Paul talks about that. I mean, man, it's, for me, my most powerful moments of ministry have been not on stage, but actually stepping off the stage, which is very important as Christians, to step off of platforms and step off of pedestals, and stepping down and looking at someone eye level and just like asking them like, how are you? And sometimes like they'll be like, fine. I'm like, no, like, how are you? And getting somebody to actually talk to you, and you listen. You listen. And it's crazy how many people haven't been listened to in a long ass time. And you're just looking at somebody in the eye, and you're having this profoundly sacred moment where like they're heard.
Yeah.
And this like 17-year-old kid at the show that like, you know, doesn't really talk to their parents and his friends. They just kind of like smoke weed and chill. They don't ever just like talk. And you're just listening to someone, and they can just pour out, and they know it's a safe place. They know that, you know, I'm not going to laugh at them. They know I'm not going to talk about what they tell me. Then they can share things with me, and they can cry, and I can hug them. And like that they can have a moment of sanctuary, because it's in those moments that, you know, people often say like, you know, like, what's going on in me? What do I need? And I'll tell like, and then I can actually like talk about Jesus in a real way. Cause honestly, man, it doesn't feel I would not feel authentic being on stage and being like, I need you guys to all pray to accept Jesus as your Lord and personal Savior. I don't know how to do that from a stage and be honest with people, because my experience of Jesus has been this profoundly personal and emotional experience. And I want people to encounter Jesus, not from me like talking like at them as a stranger, but like I want to hear their story, and I want them to know Jesus is like there for them in their pain and their very unique situation that they've gone through, that they think no one can understand me, no one will get it, no one cares. That they'll know that like, hey, there's a person who cares, and this person that's listening to me cares about what I'm going through because of Jesus.
Yeah.
It's not like he cares about me and he's a Christian. No, he cares about me because he's a Christian, because that's what Jesus has done in my life, has given me a chance to listen to them. And man, it's I've seen some pretty cool transformations. And you know, like you said, Shane comes on this podcast and always kind of reminds you that we all have too small of a gospel. Man, I've talked to some people that are, I've talked to a lot of people that a lot of Christian culture would say they're not allowed to exist. I've talked to trans kids that are like encountering Jesus, and they're like trying to figure out what that looks like next. I've talked to kids that are like secretly gay, but they're also like going to Christian college, and they don't want everyone to like think they're a pariah. You know, I've talked to like very like conservative political dudes who are like, am I allowed to be at your show? Cause I'm like a Republican, you know? I'm like, yeah. They're like, I'm just a straight white Republican dude. I'm like, yeah, you absolutely are. But just know that like, you're more than a straight white Republican dude. Like that doesn't have to be your identity. Those can be auxiliary peripheral. That's like the peripheral bullshit, in my opinion. Like that's just that's just whatever. Like that's not who you are. Just like I'm not a long-haired screaming metal dude. Like that's peripheral. That's very temporary stuff. And I don't just mean that, yeah, my dumb band won't be around forever. I mean that like that's like smoke and mirrors. Like the real thing is like that you are a child of God. And yeah. I want people, man, my prayer for every person that I pray for, you know how like, you know, a lot of people just repeat the Lord's Prayer. I love the Lord's Prayer, but my prayer that I repeat for people is that they would go to sleep and that they would wake up tomorrow and that they would have a profound realization of what it means to be a child of God. Like the child of God would be such a potent experience that would be their identity. That like, you know, because we don't choose where we're born. We don't choose our race. Heck, honestly, a lot of us we think we do, but we don't even choose our political orientation. Like so much of that is given to us by our life experience and where we're lived and who we're raised by and the economic or social problems that we've experienced. But Jesus chooses us. And that's something that we need to respond to and choose. And so that's really who they are. And so I want people to be a child of God, which once again isn't something that you can like just know about by reading. It's something that you know, like experientially, what that feels like. And man, I want people to know that. And that's why I want to get off stage and I want to listen to someone. And I don't care if there's 200 people. I don't care if I'm going to be here for 5 hours. That doesn't matter. Because when I'm there, I have this, like, I'm like, God, that's why you created me, is to listen to these people.
Yeah.
I'm not really a preacher, and I don't look down on preachers. Just like I don't look down on Maddie, because Maddie definitely preached on stage. I listen. Like, God's called me to listen. That's why Silent Planet is a good name for us. Because like, I'm learning how to be quiet, and I'm learning that you can do profound ministry if you can just listen, and you can be in a moment with someone and not be distracted. So sorry.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I was just going to say that's something that I've been listening to Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life.
Interesting guy. Really interesting guy.
And he's just talking about how few people actually listen to each other. And so it just made me think of that.
Jordan Peterson, man, I feel like he's because he comes out of I was working on my master's degree in the psych world, and he comes out of psychology, and he's obviously made a huge splash because he is he's taking Freudian and Jungian psychoanalytic principles, and then he's applying it to culture. And I'm of the opinion that sometimes it works and sometimes he's a little bit off with it. But man, when it comes to like his prescriptions to like becoming a healthy person, I'm like, yeah, he's right on.
Yeah,
when he gets political, I kind of more with Slavoj Žižek, who sort of says, they've kind of disagreed on some stuff about how he applies like what Marxism is and stuff. But when it comes to Jordan Peterson, he's right on with a lot of stuff. And it's interesting because I don't know if he's a Christian. Is he? I don't know if he comes from a Christian background.
You can't pin him down on that question. No. He won't answer it.
Yeah, but he's a psychoanalytic for sure. He understands Freud and Jung very well, and he's applying psychoanalytic principles, because I mean, all of psychology came out of that's the foundation of psychology, Sigmund Freud and what they were talking about. And man, there's a lot of depth there. There's a lot of storytelling. Yeah. There's a lot of narrative. There's a lot of meaning making, and definitely interesting you brought him up, because I wrestle with him. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, sometimes I'm like, no. But I'm glad he exists. I'm glad that he's writing his book.
Yeah. And I do actually think a lot of Judeo-Christian worldview comes out of him, and he'll even admit that. I think, but again, I think it comes back to what you were saying with the complexity of human beings, and we're all flawed. And so, to be honest, deep down, everyone should make us on some level go yes, and on some levels go no. That's probably part of the human condition. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
There's people on this podcast that that have told me before. I'm not going to point them out. There's people on this podcast that are like, hey, I love you. I also disagree with you on that. And like, it's cool. I'm glad that there are people that are mature enough to say like, hey, I like this, and then I don't like this, and I agree with you here, and I disagree with you here. But it's cool that they don't have to exit the conversation, or they don't have to write me off. It's like, heretic, I want nothing to do with you. Be gone,
Right.
Like, I'll never forget when Rob Bell wrote that book.
Love Wins.
Love Wins, right? And I read the book a long time ago. And he said something like, yeah, like maybe hell isn't a thing, or I don't know. He questioned the reality of hell or something. And I'll never forget John Piper was like, farewell, Rob Bell, or something.
And the famous tweet. Yeah,
famous tweet. And I thought that was so indicative of the absolute ego and pride that I see a lot of times in people. They're like, I have the answers, and so if you ask these questions, be gone. You have no place. Like, those are the people that worry me. I mean, all philosophy itself came from Socrates being like, I'm the wisest man in Athens because I know that I don't know very much. Yeah. And that's what makes me wiser, the wisest of Athens. And obviously people were doing philosophy before Socrates, but the foundation of philosophy was this intellectual humility. And I love intellectual humility. And intellectual humility doesn't mean that you can't take chances and that you can't say big words and mess up. Intellectual humility means you should at least be able to see that maybe you don't know everything the Bible
says. God, maybe.
Yeah, maybe you're not God. Like maybe your interpretation of that verse isn't right. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that like God's gonna smite you for being wrong. But it's okay to be wrong sometimes.
So here's my question, and I mean, sometimes being humble will also get you killed, as Socrates found out. But here's the thing that the way that the lens through which I view this stuff, and some of the things that kind of check me a little bit is the predominant mindset of our world today is relativism, right? There is no absolute truth. It's all about preference, and I think that at the heart of this are good intentions, but ultimately it plays out to be pretty insidious because it's based on the idea that there are no moral absolutes because there is no God. Without a God, where do moral absolutes come from?
Which
and really,
absolute despair.
Right. And like Dostoevsky says that, then everything becomes permissible. And the thing is, the thing that makes where I kind of use the word false dichotomy all the time is that I feel like we take, the bad record of Christians loving one another and go to the far extreme of saying, well, to remedy that ill, there is now no standard by which we can lovingly look to, not say we'll ever get there, but now we erode the standard altogether. And I think the best analogy that I've come up with is I have two kids, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Oh, congratulations.
That's why I look as good as I do right now. The way I look at it is I want what's best for them. And they often want things that's not what's best for them. You know, my son will want to do things. My son is wild, long, blonde haired, like he should be in California. He's crazy and I love him to death, but he wants to jump on everything, climb on everything. And a lot of what he wants would hurt him. I mean, even today he was like wanting to shove something down the garbage disposal.
Absolutely.
And the problem is if I, in the name of love, erode all rules, can I be unloving in the way I try to go about discipling my son? Of course. And I often have been, and I have to ask for his forgiveness. But the risk I can hear in people, maybe even listening to this, is to think that the loving thing to do is for there to be no rules. So how do we manage that balance? I know we're going long here, but this conversation is raw, so I don't want to stop.
So a lot of, young people, they go to college or maybe they just pick up a book and they discover existentialism, right? Existentialism is, this philosophy, and it's too broad to even really be defined, but it's more or less a philosophical movement that really was popularized in the 1900s, and in the mid 1900s. And this idea of like, what if there is no structure, there's no boundary, and it's all what we make of it.
Postmodernism,
postmodernism, and we need to make of reality whatever we can and whatever we want, and we have to choose what defines us. And so it's funny because when Nietzsche, famous existentialism, gets into nihilism, when Nietzsche said God is dead, a lot of people took that to mean like he was like, we killed God, yes, but he was actually sad.
Remorse.
He was this idea because he believed that, like, Nietzsche didn't believe in the existence of God, but he wanted culture to believe in God because he wanted culture to have a purpose and a morality and a structure and a belief and most importantly, I think, a story of who we are and why we exist. And if I'm going to actually turn back the clock now to the 1800s, the father of existentialism is Soren Kierkegaard. And the funny thing is, I talk to a lot of young people that are like, yeah, I'm a postmodern, I'm an existentialist, I believe that, whatever, I don't believe that there's any truth or that truth is completely relative. These people don't know that the father, or maybe even grandfather of existentialism, was a theologian and a Christian, Soren Kierkegaard. And in my opinion, probably the most intelligent person to ever live. He wrote very difficult to understand books from the perspective of different people because it was too easy for him to just write theological books about what he believed. He's like, it's going to be easier for me to make up this guy named Anti-Climacus, and I'm going to write as this guy. And so not only did he write theological treatises, he wrote them from the perspective of someone else in his brain, because it was too easy to just be himself. And so, but he existentialism comes from him in Fear and Trembling, and he dives into Isaac and the sacrifice, of Isaac that Abraham had to make, and he gets into that. But all that to say, existentialism came out of him not because this theologian believed that nothing was real. He believed God was real. He was a devout Christian. What he believed is that the Christian faith is not based on a series of logical steps, but it's actually based off of this, what he called the leap of faith. And he at one point said, credo que absurdum. He said, I believe because it is absurd. And I think that's a really profound statement. He's like, I believe in God because it is so profound and it's absurd. It has to be real in a sense. And so he talked about this leap of faith. And that's why at one point he's talking about apologists, people that do apologetics, that, like they debate the faith. He said the apologetic is the second coming of Judas, because they betray Jesus, but they're worse than Jesus. They're worse than Judas because they think they're defending Jesus, but in reality, they're like Peter, cutting off the ear. They're betraying Jesus with their absurdity. And that's the kind of existentialism. That's the kind of postmodernism that I like. This understanding that it's not all relative, but you can't prove faith. You ultimately are going to make a leap of faith. And as a matter of fact, we're all making a leap of faith. And an atheist has to make a leap of faith. We're all making leaps of faith, and maybe humans are not as rational as they think they are. And I'm a big believer that humans are not rational beings. No. We are not Homo sapiens, right? Is what we call humans, which means wise beings or thinking being. Yeah. I don't think we're Homo sapiens. And there's actually a book called Desiring the Kingdom from James K.A. Smith. And he talks about homo liturgus, that we are lovers. And so that's why I call our listeners lovers, because I believe that we are loving beings. I think that's what sets us apart from nature. Because if you look at a dolphin, those things are smart. They're really smart. They could be as smart as us, but we're loving beings. I think that's what sets us apart as humans. And that's where the image of God is. And so I like postmodernism as so far as people realize that we all have our own perspectives on a situation, and that truth is filtered from our life perspective. But I don't like postmodernism. It says there's no point, because there is a point, and it's God, and God is love, and learning how to love is the point. And so that there is a point, but I don't think it's this heady mathematical equation. That's why I don't like Plato, because Plato is like, we're going to become so smart that we're going to ascend, whatever. But it's like, no, I believe we're going to follow Jesus and we're going to be lovers. And that's where our identity is. So.
Well, and ultimately the cross, I think, okay, see this, you can get into murky water here, but I'm quite simplistic in my view of it, because I don't believe that God would create a system so complicated that only the super intelligent with all the privileges of education could understand it. That's why you have to be like a little child to come to Jesus. That's why there is a humility in that there isn't, you don't need to ascribe or ascend to this certain intellectual level to be able to come in. Otherwise, it's like every other religion, right? And that's kind of where the whole thing falls apart. And so, no, I absolutely agree with you. I think we make it too complicated. The whole leap of faith thing, I think, is interesting. The way I would put it is I equate it to my relationship with my wife, and that I don't know that she's not going to cheat on me tomorrow or a week or a year, but I have faith that she won't, based on what I've seen of her to date. I have evidence that will lead me into the future. And the reality is we can trust God into the future because of what we see of him in the past, and especially obviously embodied in Jesus. And so that leap of faith, in a sense, is to say, I can't prove to you everything, but you know what? I can show that Jesus came from me while I was still a sinner and died for me. And that is all the evidence I need to take that leap of faith. Absolutely. And then, like, beyond that, I think we need to have a lot of grace and love for one another.
We do. We absolutely do. And I love both of the family metaphors you had. I've been thinking a lot about how what we want is often the thing that will kill us, and how fathers and mothers understand that better than anyone, because you see kids, it's like they want so badly to do that thing that's going to hurt them so bad, and that's a really good picture of who we are in our relationship with God. Like, we're constantly desiring these things that will destroy us, and then we don't get them, and then we're so mad at God for not letting God didn't let us destroy us, and even really good things can destroy us if they're not at the right time. Like, someone can say, yeah, I want to get married and have a family. That's a good thing, right? Well, not always. It can destroy you if it's not the right time in the right place, and the right thing that God has ordained for you. Like, I want to be a dad, but I haven't rushed into being a dad, because I know that if I do that on my own time, it's going to cause a lot of pain, you know?
It'll cause a lot of pain either way, but that's just fatherhood.
Yeah.
But literally, perfect example of what you're saying. Every Monday, my 4-year-old and I do French toast Mondays. It's like my new thing in the quarantine. And he flips the French toast, but his right hand always goes out to try to stabilize himself on the pan. And he just wants to do that. No matter how much I'm like, don't put your hand on there, it's going to burn you. And he looks at me like, Dad, what are you talking about? It's like been this beautiful picture. Exactly.
This little light mark under my fingernail is me putting this part of my finger on the stove at 3 years old. It's one of my first memories. I remember just screaming, and my mom's trying to hold it.
Right.
But yeah, like that's what your kid's trying to get one of these scars, you know.
Well, dude, if he ends up as cool as you, that'll be all right with me. Hey, look, we could go on for days. You're a fascinating person. You're full of the Holy Spirit, I can tell. Really honor you for the time you've put into this and for giving us this opportunity to speak. I think David has one last really important question.
Yeah. What's up, David?
No, I couldn't agree more. It's been so good. I hope we can have you back again, Garrett.
I'd love to be back. Sorry, we had several ones that I had to cancel. I've been.
No worries.
Oh, by the way, I was sent this picture, and I don't know what it means, but I think it's important I put it up here.
Oh
what? What is it?
How did I even get that?
So that's my roommates. I saw them take that photo.
Somehow I ended up with it. So here you go.
Yeah, how did Jay send that to you?
I don't know, but I got it. That's all that matters.
Hey, so Garrett, I got a text from Nigel. He said that he's your #1 fan.
Yeah. Hey, Nigel, what's up, man?
And so he wants your opinion of the RLIUA initiative.
RLIUA
initiative. Release lions into urban areas. Because he feels like it could be, it just could bring people together. It's like you're out walking. Hey, what happened to Billy? A lion got him. It could cause people to ask the big questions.
Yeah,
it would take away boredom.
Totally.
What do you think?
It's like there's not going to be Bloods and Crips when there's lions and humans.
We have to band together.
Yeah, there's not going to be. It's not going to be like, oh well, they're a cop and I don't like cops. It's going to be like, no, we're all people, and those are lions, and clearly the lions get along. Like for the most part, I've never seen a lion eating another lion, but I've definitely seen people, hurting each other.
So you would Stanley be behind this initiative then? Clearly be behind this then.
You'd have to think about it.
Well, yeah, you have the question of, there's such a good this is a good political question too, right? Because you're like the question of consent, and then it's a question of like, because the libertarian would say, why not? Like I'll deal with it. I'll be good on my own. But then the more socialist minded person's like, well, as a society, we need to decide. And then so it's hard to say.
The Republicans would want to shoot it and then skin it and put it on the wall.
No, totally, yeah. And then they do that, and the Democrats would protest that. I would probably be a fan. I'd probably be a fan of having a local initiative, and you just each town gets to vote. But I would vote yes. Yeah, but I don't want to be the king and just say lions, whether you want or not. But I do as I will have put a sign. I don't have a lawn, but if I had a lawn, I'd put a sign on my lawn that says vote yes. vote yes on the initiative. Yeah.
Garrett, that is
Wait.
by far the best response. You know what? I salute you. That is the best response we've ever gotten to that really ridiculous question. Garrett, look, this has been amazing. This is the Provoke and Inspire podcast. It will come out tomorrow, roughly 1 p.m. Central Time.
Yeah.
We really hope you're doing well. We hope you're blessed and you're surviving this quarantine. And yeah, man, this has been awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thanks for the folks hanging out in the comments and anyone watching. And thanks to everyone except for my dingus roommates. So
You just used dingus, which is my favorite word. I think that this was meant to be.
I call my band dingus, and then sometimes when people are like being jerks on the internet, I'm like, don't be a dingus. But
Dude.
I like to say dingus because it just
The onomatopoeia of it. Like dingus just feels like a flick. Like
exactly.
When it's like, oh, dingus.
You dingus. But it's not like F you. It's just
No.
more dingus,
No, it's like Nelson Muntz from The Simpsons or something. It doesn't feel too extreme.
Exactly.
We're tracking. I think we're in the same genre here.
We are.
Garrett, this has been awesome. We'll
Thanks.
talk to you next
Garrett.
time.
See you
Bye.
soon. Bye.
Love you.
Hey guys, so we are going to do just one last thing here before we close up. This is actually pretty serious. That was an amazing episode. Garrett Russell, wow, mind blown, awesome dude, good heart. Again, this will come out tomorrow, 1 p.m. Central, and you can check that out. Please rate or review this episode, or just this podcast in general. And if you've never listened to this podcast before, please consider doing that. I mean, we have amazing conversations like this every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 2 p.m. Central Time. Including the one we just had, which will be coming out tomorrow. So anyway, David has a few words he wants to say before we wrap up here.
Yeah, I just want to say a good friend of mine and Ben's, Cy Rogers, died today. And I met Cy many years ago. He actually was in our band for a while. And he's probably one of the most beautiful, articulate communicators. I mean, he was amazing, and he talked a lot about sexual brokenness. We had him recently. We've had him on a couple of our podcasts. We love him very much, and his wife Karen and their daughter Grace. And so, anyway, it's really he's a beautiful man, and I'm glad that he's not suffering anymore. That he's with Jesus. But I just want to honor Cy and Cy Roger, and just the kind of the impact that he's had on my life, and just wanted to say that.
Yeah. I have memories of Cy. Well, I mean, he was on this podcast twice. I know that many of you were really blessed by him. It's so surreal. Like as Jenna is saying, he just was on, and he was so vibrant and full of life and an amazing story, and touched so many lives, and such a charismatic, brilliant communicator. And I knew him growing up, and and when I was in high school, for a short time, they were actually our neighbors, and so they lived right across the street. And I remember you guys we'd always go over there because he'd always have about 6 VHS Blockbuster videos rented out, and you'd always be like, "Hey, Cy, we're coming over. What movie do you got for us?" And you'd always have a movie, and just an amazing man of God. And obviously, our heart goes out to their family because they're the ones who are suffering, obviously. And we ask for that God would just bring mercy and his Holy Spirit and his presence. And man, life is short, right? You never know. I think it just renews my sense of urgency and wanting to live for my life for the things that matter, and to love people, and to be grateful for the people that you have in your life, because you don't know if they'll be around forever. So, I mean, they won't be around forever. You just don't know how long they have, right?
Yeah. So anyway, love you,
Yep.
Karen, and
Yeah.
we miss you, Cy. We'll see
Yeah,
you
we
soon.
miss you. Yeah, see you soon. So anyway, thank you for listening to the Provoke and Inspire podcast. This has been really awesome, and we're really grateful. Again, subscribe, rate it, review it, and we'll talk to you on Wednesday. We have Julia Garshagen. She's an incredible apologist. Speaking of apologists, amazing woman of God. We're going to talk about the major questions of life at a time like this. So we'll talk to you next time. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Provoke and Inspire podcast. To listen to past episodes, search Provoke and Inspire on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever podcasts are found. See you next time.